when I started learning music theory, it made my decision making harder than simpler because suddenly I knew that there were 4 options to choose from. In those 6 months, I realized that I was really enjoying it. And, those 8, 10 hours were 12, 14, 16 hours. It didn't feel like work. You can't force a vision or you can't expect the same ambition and same drive from everyone. Some songs take like almost a decade to write, and some songs happen in 2 hours. The song that we did with Marty, the lyrics for that came to me while I was stuck in a traffic jam. So someone had a song in English and they were presenting at like a conference, and there were a bunch of ANRs giving feedback. And this guy's like, हाँ बढ़िया है पर ये गाना अच्छा होता अगर ये हिंदी में होता. अरे भाई, the guy's an English singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
You can't give him feedback कि हिंदी में गाना लिख दो यार.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of TrakTalk with Sodhi, where we dive into the heartbeat of the Indian music scene. Today we have someone who's turning the Indian rock scene on its head, Varun Rajput from Antariksh. From shredding guitars to deep storytelling and killer prog rock vibes, he's really redefining what it means to be a rock star in the Indian rock scene. Well, Varun, thank you so much for joining, man, and taking out the time.
Thank you for having me, man. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. I was always so interested in learning so much about you. I think you've been doing so great in the Indian music scene.
Thank you.
And as I always do, I मेरी शुरुआत episodes की ऐसी होती है कि I want to learn where was the beginning? Where was the inception of Varun Rajput's musical journey? कौन सा ऐसा, what was the first song? What was the first band or that motivated you to kind of pick up the guitar? Pick up the mic and start with your, entire musical journey.
Right. I think it's very hard to, you get asked this question a lot and it's very hard to pinpoint that one specific moment. But I definitely have 2 or 3 of those moments that I can recall. One is, the first time I ever heard a rock pop album, and it happened to be like an album by Michael Learns to Rock. And that was the first English record I ever heard. And it was something that really piqued my interest and I got into listening to a lot of music. So before even getting into playing anything, what happened was I was listening to a lot of music, all thanks to my father, who had an amazing collection of these. We had this huge drawer of cassettes, and although he was he would listen to a lot of old Bollywood, a lot of Hindustani classical music and ghazal and all, everything in that zone. I would listen to all of it, and then one day I heard Michael Learns to Rock, and then I discovered Bryan Adams and Bruce Springsteen and U2 and all of that, and that's when I discovered that I really enjoyed listening to music, and that was that. It was the school days. I was more into sports than music at that point in time, and then one day I distinctly remember this moment, and I was preparing for my engineering entrances, and GIR was happening. So I got to learn that there's something called the GIR that happens at Pragati Maidan. It's supposed to be one of the biggest rock concerts that happens in Delhi, and there was no way I could go there. I probably just gotten out of college, and I dropped a year to prepare for engineering, and there was no vehicle that I had, and it was pretty far from where I lived.
Yeah.
So I remember this moment kind of, really it's etched in my memory, that I went to a friend's place, almost yaar chal chalte hain, I want to see this, kya hota hai? And then, he's saying, aaja dekhte hain, we'll figure it out. And then I go to his place, and there are another bunch of friends who are like, arey chhod yaar, kya karna hai? Who's gonna go watch this? Somehow, after dilly-dallying for an hour and a half, the two of us got into his car, and then we got to Pragati Maidan and walked into the theater, the OAT where the gig used to happen, and it was 9:50. The gig was supposed to end at 10, and all I witnessed was 10 minutes of probably it was a new metal band playing, and my first introduction to a live concert was a sea of people And there were a bunch of people who were just like, floating on top of that sea of people, and like, oof, like a really crunchy metal band playing. And I was blown away. I had no idea what this was. And for some reason, like that memory stayed with me. And I was like, yaar, kisi din to, like I want to probably play, be on that stage. And I hadn't picked up playing the guitar until then.
Oh, okay.
So it was just like a very like a fantasy, a random dream that you'd probably have. Ki chalo yaar, one day. So that was kind of the beginning. And those two moments I really remember. One was picking up like that MLTI cassette, and then watching this gig.
That's so interesting. I remember the GIR times. I mean, I
Yeah.
really miss that GIR doesn't happen now. It's kind of sad. But then, I think everything has its own time and place.
Right.
And because of that influence, I think, so you picked up the guitar after school. Is that what you're saying?
Thank
your
you.
guitar playing skills are very, very impressive. I mean,
Thank you.
I've tried to pick up the guitar and it
Yeah.
didn't work out great for me, but still, I'm just on that part. But so you said ghazal and rock and, all of those influences kind of, I think we can also sense it in Antariksh that, it's got that whole fusion thing going on. You're still kind of coating it with rock at the end of it, but
Right.
there are tones of, Indian classical and a lot of other things. Was this always your vision?
Not really, honestly. When like I started out, when I picked up the guitar eventually, and then at that point in time, I was listening to a lot of classic rock. So it was all like GNR, Deep Purple, Whitesnake, then Iron Maiden, and then I discovered Dream Theater. So that was kind of the zone I was listening. And when I picked up playing the guitar, I started learning those songs. And this is back in college. I formed like a band. We went and played a bunch of competitions. That was the usual thing. Won a few, and then one band led to another, and that happened for I think about 2 to 3 years. And the bedrock of like what I was trying to play, I realized was rock music.
Right.
That was I related the most to it. But listening wise, there was a lot of music that I'd heard all over the years, and there was an appreciation for everything, right? From jazz to Hindustani classical to, if you might want to call it Sufi, but
Right.
I don't like that term so much.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like 43 cassettes of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan that
Oh,
we had
wow.
at home, and I'd heard all of those. So it was all there. And, as you start like maturing as a musician, you start appreciating like a lot of nuances that exist in different styles. And then came the idea that, hey, why don't we try and learn those nuances and borrow those nuances and kind of make them our own. So that was the whole idea. So when Antariksh, so I started Antariksh with a couple of my friends who were in a very similar space. At that time, we were all quitting our corporate careers. And then, so we were all fans of prog rock. So that was kind of the bedrock. And the idea was, how can we bring that sound to mainstream indie music? Because not many people were doing that at that point in time. There were euphorias,
Exactly.
which was like, folk rock. You could call
Right.
them folk rock. And Indian Ocean was fusion. But there was like there wasn't any edgy Hindi rock act at that point, and we thought like it'll be cool to do something like that. So that happened, and then I think the borrowing of nuances is just that you listen to a lot of different styles, and they're like, hey, this is cool. Can I borrow it in a rock context?
Yeah.
Can I use this in a certain way? And that's what was kind of the inspiration. That's been the idea.
Right.
To bring those elements, and it's fun, like learning those new things. So I think that's pretty much
Brilliant how, I mean, it's truly connected to your soul. Like inspirations, not everything can be taken and infused into the sound that you want to kind of put out. It's got to be very natural, right?
right.
So when was it that you started Antariksh? What year was this?
This is 2012. Yeah.
2012.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so I know that there's been a lot of, because when you started off with a couple of friends, I know everybody somehow either moves away or new people come in. There have been a lot of lineup changes within the band itself.
Right.
Of course, you've been constant. You were kind of spearheading the whole band's vision. So in terms of the changes, how do you manage to still ki yahi sound rakhna hai somehow? Because at the end, somebody needs to have a vision. I have discussed this. So, vision kaise maintain rakhte ho?
I don't know, man. I think what I really believe is that like you need to, in the first place, have a vision.
Yeah.
It can change, right? Your vision can change. You evolve every day. You are a new person every day. Every few years, you look back, you're a different person. You can realign, you can pivot, and all of those things are all good. So when we started Antariksh, we had like a very common vision. We wanted to bring that, Western prog rock sound to Hindi music. It was as simple as that. We wanted to still make it accessible and, keep it palatable enough.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to do something that's too niche because it's very hard to build a career off.
Of course.
And when we started this, so I and Mridul, who was the former singer of the band, so we were together in a bunch of bands earlier as well during our college days. So we had this pact कि यार, 6 महीना करके देखते हैं. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because I was tired of cribbing कि यार music करना है, music करना है. You're in the corporate career, आप कर रहे हो, but there is this thing, कि यार music, let's give it a shot. And the world of music seemed really exciting. And the fact that it's hard to pursue, you're not giving it a shot. So at one point, we're like, yeah, kar lete hain. At the end of the day, samajh aa jayega कि if it makes sense. And then later on, you will not think कि nahi, try nahi kiya, right? Regret nahi hona chahiye. So that was the whole point. And then we did that. So we thought कि let's 6 months, 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, whatever it is, we'll work. We'll build this, we'll write an album. It was a dream always to put out an album. So we started writing, and in those 6 months, I realized that I was really enjoying it. And, those 8-10 hours were 12, 14, 16 hours, and it didn't feel like work, right? And then you're learning different aspects of it. You're learning the production, recording, composition, songwriting aspect, of course. And then you're also learning about, hey, how do you distribute music? Like the music business side of things. How do you market music? How do you make sure, how can you get gigs? Like who do you need to contact? And this entire world was really exciting to me. Mridul at the same time learned that, when music became work for him, usko maza nahi aa raha tha. He felt that it was very lonely process to be sitting like 8-10 hours by yourself, writing, recording. And so 6 months later, we realized that I wanted to do this, and he figured that, hey, I want to go back to the US. I want to do my MBA, and which was very disappointing for me because he was kind of like the guy I looked up to for all my guitar playing, songwriting inspiration. But somehow I kind of found courage to carry on. Because at that point, he was the lead singer. It's very hard to replace singer of a band. The identity changes, the sound changes. So, but kahin na kahin se wo hausla aaya ki yaar dikhte hain, let's take it further. Let someone else, let's get someone else to sing and see how that functions.
You mentioned कि 6 महीने में you started off jotting down कहाँ से revenue आ रहा है, किधर से gig मिलेगा, how to structure the song,
right,
how to push an album. And this is something we will definitely come to slightly later in the conversation, because it's very important, a conversation for people to know.
Yeah, 100%.
After Mridul, has there been more lineup changes?
Oh yeah, like tons of them. Yeah. So we tried to get another singer on board.
Yeah.
We found this really good singer. We were judging a rock like a competition in DU, and we found this guy who had an amazing voice. Like we got him on board. He sang with us for about a year, but then like he wanted to move on and do something else, right? So another layer of that, like, oh shit, man, now what do? Now you get another singer, and then the identity of the band will change once again.
Exactly.
And it's very hard, like, because in your head you also build an image that you want to portray. It's also there in your head. So first you have to change that, and then you need to change that in people's mind, because you play a gig and at the next gig they're like, yaar, wahan pe to koi aur tha singer. So ye wahi band hai kya? And to me that, like, I don't like enjoy that feeling a lot. So it was hard. Then we got another friend to sing he was there for 6 months. Then he had some family issue.
Shit.
He had
Sorry
to
about that,
back
but
off.
yeah.
So during this process, I realized and learned the fact that, hey, everyone has a very different journey, right? Everyone has a very different situation in life. It could be a situation at their home. It could be their financial situation. It could be, their career objectives change. Someone might think, yeah, okay, at 23, 24, I want to do this, but at 28, they're like me, yaar, nahi karna. So that was like a big realization. There were a lot of setbacks, like, because this was happening, and because of which we were not able to write a lot. We were gigging a lot at this. So this phase is like 2014 to 2018.
Yeah.
For 4 years, we were gigging a lot. So all that I dreamt of, okay, hey, we become busy as a band. You go on tours, you get gigs, you make enough money to sustain yourself, and then invest and build upon it. It was happening, but we were not able to write and record because one person changes, then you get another one, then you get the other guy to learn the entire set, which takes a while. And then you again get comfortable. Then, another person has another idea. He probably doesn't want to go ahead and do this. So those challenges made me learn that, you can't force a vision, or you can't expect the same ambition and same drive from everyone.
Yeah.
And in this entire time, my dad kind of suggested, hey, why don't you start singing?
Absolutely. Right.
He's like, you're doing backing vocals, and because you're basing your career on this entire thing, you've invested 4-5 years, prime years of your life into it. You can't depend on people. And the moment the face of a band changes, it's very hard, right? Because again, as I said, the identity changes. Now you need to again establish that identity, and it's a long process. It takes years sometimes to even set a simple identity. So that's when I said, okay, I started taking vocal lessons. I knew I'll suck for a few years, but at the same time, I was like, yaar, seekh lenge na, matlab, everything else in life you've learned. कभी तो गिटार बजाना भी नहीं आता था, वो भी सीखा. कभी गाना लिखना भी नहीं आता था. I said, let's figure it out. We'll try, learn, suck, keep learning, and kabhi to jaake you'll get to a point where you'll be like comfortable.
Exactly.
And then you realize it's like it's a journey, right? No matter where you get, you see another like world opening up, and you're like, oh shit, like I suck even today.
Yeah.
So that's when you realize कि यार ये तो journey है, तो ये तो चलता रहना है. As long as you're learning, as long as you're growing, it's all good. So that realization, I think, really helped. कि okay, I want to do this. I have the drive. I have the ambition. I'm gonna continue. किसी को आना है, more than welcome. Come join.
Yeah.
If you don't wanna be a part of it, it's all right. And I think that's what's happening, and which is why you also see that, barely any bands exist in today's times. It's very hard, right? How do you find 4 or 5 people with the same drive, same ambition, same goals, same financial situation,
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'd kill to have like a stable lineup and
Of course.
have the identity, have like a very consistent sound. But hey,
I can understand the challenges on that. So basically, you took upon yourself कि भाई मैं ही गाना गा लेता हूँ, मैं ही identity, because the vision was always yours at the end of it, because you started it all for Antariksh, right? And but collaborations are definitely tough.
Right.
But I think that gets us to that you collaborated with Marty Friedman from Megadeth.
Right.
I mean, it's such a big thing to have him on one of your songs. I mean, I can't even imagine what it'll feel like, to do recording sessions with him, to have him come up with melodies and the lead and everything, for the song. So I think you met him at the airport, and it was apparently a very interesting story, and I would love to know about it, man.
I always think of it as a story of luck more than anything else. So there's this specific moment. We were playing the NH7 Weekender in Shillong, and we played our gig, and Marty was headlining the next day.
Right.
So we stayed back. So Shrikant, who also plays guitars for Antariksh, so he and I were watching his gig, And we were literally like, like blown away by his playing
Of
because
course.
he is something. And then, but live, he was just something else. You could, every note that he was playing had so much soul in it. And at that point in time, we were in the process of recording a bunch of new songs. And there was this song where I was kind of procrastinating playing my solo. I was just not getting enough time. It was a gigging season. So Srikanth had played a solo. Mine was still pending. And ऐसी बात कर रहे थे, thought आया कि यार, I wish like we could get Marty to play on this.
Yeah.
It was a random thought, like, and and little would you know that the next day we were on our way back to Delhi, and 2 seats ahead of me, Marty and his band were sitting.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh shit, that's Marty. And
Manifestation.
manifestation, right?
Yeah.
He was sleeping, they were all sleeping, and we didn't feel like we want to go and disturb them. And weirdly enough, we were stuck in the flight for 3 hours before it actually took off. And like, okay, Marty hai, hum baat to kar rahe hain. We reached Delhi, we got off, and we met him and said hello, got a picture clicked,
Right.
and all of that, and that was it. And we entered the airport, and we see him again at the luggage belt,
Right.
waiting for this luggage. So, and I just had this conversation with my bandmates. It was Dan and Srikanth. Said, yaar, ki baat karu? Should I ask him, like, if he will
course.
play? Somehow, randomly, I found this courage. Said, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या होगा? He'll say no.
Yeah.
Which is like, which changes nothing.
Exactly. That's the way to kind of go for this.
So I just went and I started chatting up that, we played a day before you. This is the kind of music we play. And he's a very sweet chap, very nice guy. And, we spoke for 5 minutes. He played on a bunch of songs by Sky Harbor,
Right.
Keshav's songs. So, and Keshav had mixed some of our music. So we started talking about that, and probably, that he found some credibility
Exactly.
to continue talking, I guess. And then I just asked him, is there a way we can get you to play on one of our songs? And he very politely refused. He said, I'd love to, but hey, generally my manager doesn't allow me to. And, there's a bunch of restrictions, label restrictions, this and that,
Contracts and everything in
contracts
place,
and this and that. And he said, like, recording in Japan is very expensive.
Okay.
So I wouldn't recommend.
Right.
So I was like, okay. All dreams like crashing down. And I anyway said, I'd love to send you some of my music, and would, if you get a chance to listen, that'll be amazing. And he said, okay, why don't you write to me? I went back home. I sent him the music with no expectations, of course.
Yeah.
And he ended up listening. I sent him about 4 songs. He ended up listening to the entire album.
Right.
And he wrote back saying that, hey, this sounds more international than Indian. I was thinking that you guys are an Indian band and you'll have that sound. He liked it. He said, this sounds very like UK rock. It has a very UK
Right.
rock vibe
Yeah.
to it. So I was like taken aback, man. Like he actually took the time to listen to the music,
you,
which
sir.
is like, hey,
Yeah.
life made.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So वो हुआ, and then I asked him once again. ऐसे ही मैंने कहा एक और try कर लेता हूँ, क्या होगा?
Of
मना.
course.
So he again like politely said, hey, it's very expensive here to hire a studio, this, that,
Right.
and I wouldn't recommend. So I was like, shit. Last में अब मैं थोड़ा बदतमीजी सा कर दिया. I sent him like the demo. I go, hey, this is the song we're working on. Just in case you like it, it'll be amazing. And I completely understand if you don't. And he heard the song and he said, okay, why don't you send me the MP3 of the WAV file of it? And I was like, what the hell? Yeah, like, and it just happened, like,
Yeah.
I sent him the track to play on, and 2 days later he sent the solo. And
So great.
it's mad, yaar. And you can't plan for these things.
Of course, but it's still, I think you would have done great in sales, by the way. You need to follow up.
No,
and you
man.
Still-
I'm the worst salesperson ever, by the way. So
Yeah, okay.
it almost feels like, kya bologe? Maybe, divine is the word for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I found the courage to ask him and then like follow it up twice, because this is something I would not do normally.
Yeah.
And I'm a very, like, generally a shy, reserved guy. I'll be like the worst salesperson if I was to be one. But I don't know how that happened. And then, had I not sent him the track, this would have never happened. So it was also a huge learning that, hey, there's no harm in asking, right? Just ask. And more often than not, people are kind of willing to help, share knowledge or whatever that is. And and I shared the story with a few friends who ended up asking some of their idols to play on their songs.
What?
And that happened.
And
as
that
well.
worked for them?
And that worked for them.
See,
so I'm like,
that's-
shit, that's amazing.
So true. If you go out seeking for something and if you really ask for help or collaborations, I think it works out. I'm also very curious to understand, how does the financial aspect of such collaborations work? Of course, you don't have to spill out any numbers, but in terms of if a Marty Friedman, for example, is playing on the guitar, like how do
Right.
you work out is it royalty sharing? Is it revenue sharing? How do you
I
usually go with
believe
it?
it will vary for different people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
More often than not, if someone's playing, let's say, something as small as a guitar solo, it'll be like an upfront fee.
Okay.
And generally, most people would do that, like get like a session fee and then be done with it, than to try and track royalties. And, that's another painful thing. But a lot of collaborations, let's say, which happen between Indian artists, and I'm sure like international artists as well, are now royalty based, which is also great, right? And some of our collaborations are the thing. So I am hoping to do a bunch more.
Collaborations is great. I mean, you can retain your sound and then kind of welcome another just for that particular track. It doesn't have
Right.
to be the whole album, right? It just
Right.
creates that whole special track within that album, I think.
Right.
So it's very interesting. So you've collaborated, you've built a whole, kind of career out of Antariksh and music. And I think you recently also did international tours, right? And I think you mentioned how tiring it can be and what are the challenges. It might be glamorized.
Right.
It seems like, oh, bhai, main gaya tha, is chahiye, maine perform. I know it's going to be tiring. So what were the challenges that you really saw in terms of?
So most of the challenges and the more tiring tours have been during the season time within India.
Oh, okay.
And when the dates are kind of back to back and you're traveling between various cities, sometimes by road, sometimes by you take a flight and then do a 2-hour road trip. So you're eating at all the wrong times, you're not getting enough sleep. And I think there is no way around it, honestly, right? Things probably get easier as you grow bigger and you get more and more support. When you have like tour managers with you and all of those things in place, and then probably a tech team to do the sound checks. But in general, it is a tiring. You can't shy away from the fact and say that, hey, it is a tiring job at the end of the day, because let's say if I'm to play a show in Chennai tomorrow, most likely will take the early morning flight, right? 3 hours flight, an hour and a half to the hotel, maybe get like sleep for a couple of hours, but then you go for a sound check, which is again 2 to 3 hours, and there's a lot of these gaps with waiting periods, right? And then you play a gig, and then you do that another day, then you do that another day, and you're not getting enough sleep. So when I was only playing guitars, it was still okay. We would it's fine. The time I started singing, I realized how difficult it was. पहले मैं बोलता था to the other singers, they would say कि यार सुबह नहीं करते jam, आवाज नहीं खुली होती. मैं कहा नहीं यार तू कर ले, it's all good, don't worry about it. I distinctly remember those moments. He would be like, नहीं यार, we won't do an early morning jam. And now I'm like, I can't do an early morning jam because your voice is just not in the shape. And especially on tours, when you don't get sleep, your आपके top के 2-3 notes तो लगने बंद हो जाते हैं.
Yeah.
And if your songs have those high notes, it's very hard to you tend to get pitchy. It is tough. I'm still trying to learn how all these bands who do 28 gigs a month do it. They probably have the most amazing vocal technique or
warm-ups.
Warm-ups or there has to be something. I haven't been able to figure that out. I always ask that question to every person that how do they do it, because it feels almost like humanly impossible to sing 3 to 4 days in a row back to back with travel, 2 hour sets, 2.5 hour sets. So
I think it's because
yeah.
I mean this is another discussion I had with Shashank, that
Mhm.
at the end it's a muscle. It
Mhm.
gets tired. If it's tired and not given enough rest,
Right.
it becomes tough to keep it up for those few days. And it's understandable. I've tried to be a vocalist, but I have certain bad habits that does not allow me to kind of take my voice to the next level. But another thing that I wanted to understand from you, because you've been doing this for so long, you've had a band identity, you've been kind of working towards it's there's got to be a creative burnout that happens after a point. You feel lost, you feel ki shayad abhi I just can't. How do you deal with is this some philosophies you work towards, or some systems you put in place for yourself?
Honestly, I think the simplest thing that you can do is just take a break. I've enjoyed traveling a lot, so I've realized that every time things get a bit too much, you take a short break, you go travel. It gives you a new perspective. It gives you that break. And I've also noticed that every time I'm traveling, like let's say it's like a week-long travel, third, fourth day, I, you with the change in landscape, perspective, everything, you start getting new ideas. So if there's a acoustic guitar I'm fiddling with, sitting at some place, and suddenly there'll be a new tune that I'll be playing, and it'll sound interesting to my ears. And I think it's just a function of taking that break. Other than that, like this, like as a songwriter, I feel that you have to write as much as you can. You can't predict like how it will turn out. On what day will you be able to write a song, what day you won't. Some songs take almost a decade to write, and some songs happen in 2 hours. So
You can't
yeah,
define that,
you
I
can't
think.
define it. Like, so you have to show up every day, I feel. It's just that feeling sometimes you get, like, 11 p.m. in the night, I'll go down to my studio. There'll be a tune in my head, and I'll just start doing it in 3 hours, and there'll be a tune. And sometimes I'll sit the entire day, entire night, and, you hitting your head against a wall, and, it's just not happening. So I think when you get that feeling, I believe it's a good idea to kind of go with the flow, spend that time, no matter what time it is. I've heard of countless stories where there are people mentioning that रात को 3 बजे स्टूडियो पहुंच गया और कुछ आइडिया आ रहा था and ट्रैक कर दिया.
Of course.
So
Yeah, the burnout I think happens in any kind of line of work.
the burnout, I think is will, as you said, correctly said, will always happen in any line of work. And I think the simplest way is just taking breaks
Change your
whenever possible.
environment.
Changing the environment helps.
I've sat in my small little studio I've
Yeah.
built, and there have been days that I got frustrated that I have everything that I need,
Right.
and I'm still not able to come up with anything. And exactly, like if
Right.
I'm on a long drive,
Mhm.
I would get better ideas than sitting in the studio. And
Right.
so I would just record them. So I
Right.
can certainly relate to this.
For example, like I'll give you an example. The song that we did with Marty, the lyrics for that came to me while I was stuck in a traffic jam. And this was like I was going to a rehearsal. I was stuck in the jam for almost an hour.
So interesting, yeah.
And it was so weird. Like there was no reason for the jam to be there. And later on, I realized that the traffic had been stopped to let a politician pass.
Oh, right.
And that just like bummed me out so much. I was like, how the hell is his time worth more than the
other
collective
people.
time of every person on the road right now? And what privilege is that? And why would one think of something like that, right? And one thought led to another, and you realize that, hey, someone here feels that they kind of have all the power and all the control, and they're kind of leveraging it for things that they shouldn't be, right? That thought led to another, and I started jotting it down, and that ended up becoming the lyrics for Quest. So,
right.
so you don't know, like, when that inspiration strikes. But to answer your question once again, like the one thing I've learned to break out of that creative block is learning a new thing, learning like a new guitar lick, maybe learning a new production trick. that really helps.
Like opening up more scope for kind of creativity, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So you've always stuck to Hindi, and like, do you keep doing Hindi and English? Is there contemplation in your mind, like, kabhi English gana, kabhi Hindi gana? How do you go about that?
Yep. So when I started out, I was mostly playing in English prog rock
Because,
bands.
yeah.
Antariksh was an experiment. When we thought, चलो यार हिंदी में करके देखते हैं क्या होता है.
Mhm.
And at that point in time, suddenly there was a lot of interest in like Hindi music. I think this happened after Coke Studio and Rock On.
Yeah.
Specifically that period, like earlier on, like people would not.
Jal and all these bands are the only inspirations at that point. Or
वो
कोई
सब
नहीं
था,
था.
but in India, it was still not that big.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't relate Hindi and rock
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Fusion was fine, but anyway, that scene started opening up. People were more open and started accepting more experimental forms of music. So Hindi happened, and then we thought, might as well stick and keep doing it. But at one point, I was like, yeah, why restrict? Like, language is a language, right? Music itself is a language, and then you don't want to restrict yourself. So the current idea is that I'm happy to write in Hindi and English, both, whatever comes naturally. For me, writing in English comes like more naturally,
Right.
especially when it comes to the lyrics. But yeah,
It's also about inspiration, no? But as a band's identity, you do try to stick to also certain kind of, songs. I mean, there are so many ideas that
Right.
you would want to put out, but
Right.
as a sound of the band,
Mhm.
like sometimes you want to stick to one thing in particular to make it
Right.
kind of, your thing of that band. So Hindi is, I think, what really kind of what you've been working towards.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I keep doing this exercise called the identity analysis every few years.
Wow.
So I just sat down, like, in fact, a couple of months back, yeah. And I was just thinking that, hey, who am I? What am I trying to do? What is Antariksh? What is like the kind of music that I like? What is the kind of music I want to write? So I was writing a bunch of songs, and they were, very different from each other. So there was something that sounded very John Mayer-ish, and then there was something which is again very prog rock, and there's something that is very Toto-ish in some ways. I was like, यार ये क्या हो रहा है? So when I started thinking of it, मैंने कहा ये भी मैं हूँ. Like, I love John Mayer, I love Toto, I love Pink Floyd, I love like Piano Salvation, Dream Theater. I said this is also me. But how do I kind of put this all together? So I, just sat down one day and for almost like 3 to 4 hours, and I kept thinking that, how do I define? Because it's very hard, right? If I play a quest and then I play another song which sounds very different from it, people will not be able to understand कि ये क्या है. So I did my own identity analysis, and I figured out that, hey, this is the soundscape I want to be in, and it's okay. If two songs are really far apart, it's all right. And in fact, that led me to an idea of a new album, which I'm in the process of recording right now.
Oh, really lovely.
Yeah, it's insane. I would like probably advise everyone to do this, like every few years. Just thinking that, putting things into perspective as to what you're doing, whatever. If you're a songwriter, then what kind of music you want to write, what is the end goal.
Right.
So that exercise like just sparked this entire idea, and now all of those songs are a part of a concept album that I'm writing, and they all now suddenly make sense.
Yeah.
And
So
they fit
interesting.
together, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so for example, when you were touring internationally, your songs do have Hindi lyrics. So I mean, how did the people perceive it? Because music is
Right.
still a universal language. It's a different language, but in context of Hindi, did
Right.
it kind of change anything, or was it?
Actually, it didn't. So, and the large part of the reason for that is that the most places that we were playing to Indian audiences in those countries. So
Everywhere.
like Madagascar of all the places.
Oh wow!
Like we played a gig in Madagascar. I was like, what the hell are we gonna do? And there was like an Indian community, and we were
That's so
playing
nice.
like Indian music to them. So and that was fine. So for us, we honestly haven't played music to a completely, uh, let's say, a Western community. So
Okay.
I'll probably be able to answer that question
that's fair.
once that happens.
That's fair. But also, according to the audience, do you ever adjust your songs, like audience feedback? For example, you're performing a new song for the audience live, and you see the reaction or like your feedback that the audience kind of gives you naturally.
Right.
And do you incorporate certain things, or do you assess that ever?
I mean, it happens very organically. You know, sometimes you feel that, hey, this is a great song to play live, and you don't see like a lot of reaction in the audience, and over time you realize, okay, you know, there might be a particular reason, because the audiences also vary so much, right? And the kind of music we're playing is essentially rock music, right? And in today's time, right, when in the last, I think 5-10 years, most of the rock music is on its way down. Resurgence is happening now, which is amazing, right? In the last, I think 1.5 year, I've seen that rock music, metal music, is all coming back, and I'm very happy.
Same.
Yeah.
I've been just celebrating that in every episode.
Yeah.
Like that I've been going. Yeah, I think I'm so happy about
It's
it.
just so natural, right? Like वो क्या होता है कि एक sound से bore हो जाते हो, you know, like the audience. Suddenly there's like rap, everyone's doing rap, and then there's R&B and there's soul. When it circles back to rock,
Always
and, you know,
Psychos comes
just-
back.
So I'm just glad it's happening again. But to answer your question, you know, when you're playing a bunch of songs, वो हो ही जाता है. Whether you like it or not, you're reading the reactions. And sometimes you realize, okay, hey, this song is getting like a better response.
Of course.
So you'll probably start playing that more. You know, that's just very natural.
think-
Right.
You've had such a great experience in understanding because you did all the homework yourself.
Mhm.
You did everything, but from starting a band to understanding where the revenue sources come from. How did you manage to build a sustainable career? It's not an easy career
Right.
to build sustainability out of,
Right.
monetarily, especially financially. So, what did you do? What did you learn over the years where you started off to today?
Right.
What are the good revenue streams? Is it just gigs that work the best, or is it
Right.
platforms, online platforms? How do you go about it?
Yeah. So to answer your question, my belief has always been that to build a career in music, the foundation has to be set really strong. And what I mean by that is that like you need to understand all aspects of it. You can't just say, hey, I want to make music, but I don't like marketing it. You can't say that, you know, like, I don't care about like the music business side of things. You could be in a privileged position where you can choose not to, but more often than not, it's always better that you understand and learn it. Because, hey, you need to know like how the industry functions. Like, how else will you understand or evaluate an opportunity, right? So luckily for me, because I had a little bit of that corporate background, when we started Antariksh, I started treating it like a startup. So in my head, there were modules. You know, there's a product that you're creating, then there's a marketing module, that how do I put this out? There's a revenue module that you say. There's accounting, there's finances, there's all of those things, business development. In my head, like, I broke it down, and like, I love putting things down on an Excel. So everything is there, and it's very easy to kind of visualize and go back to that Excel sheet and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is where we're lacking. And once you start doing that in a more organized way, it helps, no? Because
Just tracking progress.
it is tracking
also.
progress, right? And you're setting goals, and even if you don't meet them, you know that you missed them by 30%.
Yeah.
Or you exceeded them by whatever, 20%. It's surprising, like, I was having this conversation with a friend, and I said, hey, I made a 3-year plan, and we exceeded our targets by 20%. And they were like, you're the first person I'm hearing who talks like that. How's that possible, right? Like, why would you not know where you're standing? Like, how would you even evaluate? कि आप कहाँ पे हो? Are you lacking behind? Are you on? And I understand that, not everyone would enjoy that. Not everyone would have that bent of mind. But then something needs to be there, right? Maybe you have like a management who takes care of all of that.
Exactly.
Maybe you have a friend who takes care of all of that. But it all, you need to have all these things in place.
Yeah. It's essential. And wait, I mean, if you don't have a knack for it, somebody's got to have it. You've got to have a manager because it's essential. As you said, it is like a startup.
Right.
It is like a business.
It is.
You're making money out of something. You need to know how to sell it.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's the economics of it. So what worked best for you in terms of, was it the gigs that pay you the best, or is it releasing songs and getting revenues from these platforms? What has been working best for you to date?
So for us, like, I would say that almost 85% of the revenue comes from gigs. And it's been like, my forever long dream to, when I was in like the corporate world, I would read a lot about passive income.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this fantasy of like generating passive income होना चाहिए ना, like time का direct return क्यों चाहिए, like दिहाड़ी पे क्यों काम करना है?
Exactly. Yeah.
I had this idea that like money should be generated while you're sleeping, and then like much later, streaming revenue started coming in, and you start realizing that hey, there is a possibility, although the payouts are terrible.
Yeah.
They are terrible, but hey, you realize that there are people who are making money from streaming, let's say from Patreon, selling merch, and a bunch of those things, which sometimes don't require like क्या बोलोगे, the hardy work, right? That you go do something and then you get paid in return. So it's still like I'm on that journey where I want that the 85% of my revenue comes from these sources, and then it's only 15% live. But I don't know when that'll happen, but I've seeing it happen for a lot of people, so which gives me hope.
I mean, there's a lot of marketing that's involved with it, and in today's world, the way social media is going, sometimes I don't know what's working here. Like, I think I'm so lost in this content world where some people that I didn't expect to explode are exploding. Maybe not because of the music, maybe because of how it's been marketed and the target audience. And it is all very, it's like a business. You need to know whom to sell, where to sell, how to increase the numbers. It is a numbers game. So very interesting to know. But would you like something to change in the Indian music scene? Is there something particular that, not just as Antariksh, as what you've witnessed?
Right. Yeah, a bunch of things. Yeah, so many things, honestly. I think on the, let's say, the labels and DSP side of things, I feel there's a lot of room, right? You mostly see that all the A&Rs at the labels are only handpicking things that they can sell very easily, which is generally overly commercial and sometimes not very high quality. So I would personally like to see more meritocracy. पता नहीं वो अपने background में है, school में होता था ना, like it's, I don't know if that's our education system that's taught us that or whatever that is, that you believe in, like I come from that background of कि यार meritocracy वाला, होता था ना कि पढ़ लोगे तो exam में number आ जाएंगे, right? If you study hard enough, you'll probably get on into a good college, whatever. If you put in the work, you'll create a good song. I mean, hopefully. So, chances, I mean, the probability is higher, right? So I believe in that, and I believe that there are a lot of talented people out there, really good at their craft, at their art form, who do not get enough recognition, while some really average ones are kind of, out there. So I wish, that changes, and that can only happen when people at the labels who have the funding are willing to take a few risks, are willing to kind of, as they feel that they are the culture builders, and they, they do their bit, and they do their research, and try and take some chances, try and get like interesting music out there than, run of the mill stuff. I feel radios can do like so much better.
Oh, yeah.
They can play good music as well, right? My general belief is that, audience ko aap jo doge na, they more often than not will ingest it, will digest it. They're happy to. आप उनको बकवास दोगे तो वो भी consume करेंगे. आप उनको अच्छा दोगे तो वो भी consume करेंगे. I always used to feel this, that hey, and this is a weird analogy, a weird thought that I used to have, that hey, why is Shah Rukh Khan not making more क्या बोलोगे, meaningful movies? This is like, let's say, late 2000s. So he's in a position that whatever he does, right, people will watch it. So why is he not like doing stuff which is more meaningful? Because there were other people who were doing that, right? Why is Bollywood not making more? Why is it doing the same old crap again and again and again and again? And now you see that happening, right? With the OTT, you suddenly see like insane actors, like so many great directors, such great TV series, movies, all of that coming in, and it's all coming from the same place. And people are consuming it, like people are loving it. People are not going to the cinema halls to watch the same run-of-the-mill stuff. So again, I realized that people will consume good music as well, but someone has to take that chance
and create that platform.
Like radios, if they start playing good songs, there's a huge thing going on as well, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's also a royalty thing that I'm not 100% sure, but I feel the radios don't pay royalties to a lot of independent artists.
Right.
They usually get these like contracts signed that hey, we'll play your music, but hey, no royalties.
We're giving you exposure, but it comes at a cost.
वो leverage पे चल रही है पूरी दुनिया.
That is so sad, man. But that's true. Like labels, I know what a couple of labels are doing, even in the hip hop scene, how they're focusing on artists that is selling and ignoring all the other artists in the label. I mean, the whole idea of a label is to push their artists and to take a risk to see what might work for that artist and then assess. And the thing with India is that itne log musicians hain achhe. There is so much scope. There's so many people coming up as, with good music. Very few have the chance to be seen. I think it's internationally also. I think it's
I'm sure,
the thing.
And I feel that they'll always be there because, even if you're really good, like you're probably not discovered how to get discovered.
Right. Yeah.
So you're learning, you're on your own journey, you're figuring out that, acha, kya hota hai, who are the right people to meet, what are the right doors to knock, and which is fine, right? But I strongly feel that, there are these, cultures being created, or artists are kind of being forced to write a certain way. Like they say that, a song needs to start with the hook, have another hook, end with the hook. Hey man, like Led Zeppelin wouldn't have existed, Queen wouldn't have existed today, like Shankar Jackson, Madan Mohan would have been nobodies if they were releasing music today. Because like you can't do that, right? You can't dictate like कि पहले 10 second में ही hook ले आओ, 3 second में capture कर लो attention, start with the vocal melody सीधा. So and like these A&Rs are giving feedback to people. Hey, like why don't you, like someone had a song in English and they were presenting at like a conference and there are a bunch of A&Rs giving feedback, and this guy's like, हाँ बढ़िया है पर ये गाना अच्छा होता अगर ये हिंदी में होता. अरे भाई, the guy's an English singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
You can't give him feedback कि हिंदी में गाना लिख दो यार. Like this guy is, he heads like a huge label. I don't want to take names, but hey man, like, come on. So you realize that people who are sitting at the top, who are the decision makers for a lot of things, are not necessarily very well versed with music. And don't care so much about music either.
I think there's a lot of greed involved too, and which clouds their whole understanding of what is needed.
I mean, I'm sure they're responsible to run a certain business, and again, there's profitability, this and everyone understands all of that. But hey, art is art, music is music. Like there is, I guess we can just hope that it gets better.
But now you're considered as a veteran. Like you're in the scene for past 12 years, I think 12 years. and this is the 13th year, like, you're going to complete that. So what is the biggest learnings that you've had that you could share with somebody who's trying to form a band right now, who probably gets inspired and wants to start? What would your first top three advice be? I mean, it doesn't have to be numbered, but
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest learning for my own self, which I've also coined in a way, like, so there's a new song that I'm writing, and these few words that I wrote are the lyrics for the song, and they go as like, खुद से बस यही इल्तिजा is like a prayer, बस सर झुका और कर्म किए जा. So, like, that's my learning, that hey, there's no point hating, there's no point being upset, there's no point trying to fight, just like do your bit. And I am trying to like live that and trying really hard to do that, because it's very hard, every often you open up Instagram, you see something, it's distracting, you like, अरे यार इस बंदे को तो गाना भी नहीं आता, ये यहाँ पहुँचा हुआ है, it's all in your face all the time. And then but then you realize, hey, everyone has their own journey, I'm on my own, let me figure this out, let me do my bit, and the day I deserve it, I'll get it. That's a learning that I've had. And personally, I'm trying to focus on that, कि काम करो, गाने बनाओ, निकालो, do it again, and hopefully one day, one will spiral out and become like a huge hit, and then suddenly all of it will be worth it. General advice I'd give to everyone is just like, also varies by, what your approach is. There are people out there who want to form bands. There are people out there who want to, let's say, be a singer-songwriter. There are people who want to be session musicians. I think it varies. But the bottom line is, I'd say, learn one thing, like learn your craft, spend time, keep getting better at it. I think it's a given for everyone.
Yeah.
And learn the business. Like, sometimes you tend to focus more on the business and forget that, hey, यार practice भी करना था, वो भी हो जाता है. And so just like trying to find out that balance, I think is the key, that, you constantly learning new things. If you're just a singer, learn to play an instrument. If you do both, just learn new things and learn how the industry functions. Figure out how, who are the right people you need to meet. You need to know that, hey, you also have to network. You also have to show up at places. You need to have like a good product, good, well-recorded song. There's so many aspects to it, right? And what I realized is that there is no escape from any of it. You can shy away as much as you want. अगर आप सारा business कर लोगे, but आप अगर आपका गाना नहीं अच्छा बना रहे, तो that also won't work, right? So I think there is no shying away from anything. Like, you have to just accept it and do everything. And hopefully find like a manager, or hopefully, find like someone who believes in you along the way. And then it gets easier, I guess.
How does the manager situation work financially usually? Like, is there a cut that they take? Is there a retainer that they take?
I think there are different models, but the most popular model is like a flat percentage commission.
That's best.
So, like, let's say a booking agent would take like a flat 10%, which is kind of
which is fair also.
Which is fair, right? Then if there's like a management company, they most likely will take a commission of 15 to 20%. Sometimes 360 degrees, which includes just streaming and getting revenue. Sometimes it's only just gigs. So it depends on what kind of arrangement you have with them. But that's usually the ballpark.
That's fair. And also on your previous point, I remember that, there was a US founder that I spoke with. He started a music business based, Web3 based company. Okay, trying to give value to to musicians. And he spoke about these three things, that an artist are three things. He's made up of three things: the business aspect of it, the artist aspect of it, and then his own self as a person who he is. So in the whole journey of a musician, sometimes what they've noticed is that someone misses out at least on one. You're trying to be yourself and do the business, but then you lose the creative aspect of things. But you're trying to do the creative or business so hard that you lose yourself a bit in the whole scenario. And the third, it's pretty obvious. So I think it's so tough to keep yourself together all the time. So it's really tough being an artist in general, as it is. And then if these kind of support systems that the artists have in terms of helping them make money are not being fair to them, it just makes such a challenging space, right?
Right.
To flourish and to kind of do well in that space it's just sad to kind of see that.
Right.
But that's the idea, like to have these conversations and, like to learn from people like you who are doing so well and are performing. And I've seen the stage setups that you've had. I love your logo. I
Thank
love
you.
the sound. I honestly love the song. Quest was, what a riff, by the way.
Mate.
So it's honestly been a pleasure speaking with you, man. I know we are coming to the end of the episode now. So, but before, we kind of end this, there's a small little thing that I do that before ending the episode, it's like a mini kind of a workshop that, I do, like understanding, like, for example, I had somebody explain how to growl, somebody explain how, to mix.
Right.
But I think in terms of, since you've been creating so many songs and building this out, if you could help understand in terms of song compositions and structures, how do you come up with it? What do you think would work? Do you think you need the 10 hooks in a song?
I don't. I really don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I genuinely believe that, let the song take you wherever it takes you. Right. I really believe that you don't know when the inspiration strikes, but, you need to be present every time, because there is possibility it will strike. So you need to show up. One thing I've learned is that, sometimes I'm just, randomly sitting and you'll hum a melody. Like, open your phone, record it. Most of the lyrics I've ever written are like, when I'm just sitting by myself on the sofa, sipping a cup of coffee, and that's it. And like, there's a thought going on in my head, and suddenly, wo 2 lines aa jata hai, like, write them down. So, in terms of songwriting, this is what I do. Every time, I'm just sitting somewhere, there's a thought, I write it down. Like, and sometimes years later, that turns into a song.
Exact.
Right. In terms of, let's say, musically, when I try to compose things, every time I learn a new thing, let's say I was learning a new voicing for a chord, and I really loved that, how it sounded. So that became the starting point for a song, right? So at least personally, what I try and do is, like, every new thing that I learn, I try and just apply it. If there's a bossa nova rhythm I'm trying to learn, I'll try and write a song. If there's a new voicing I'm learning, usko kuch na kuch kar denge. If a new riff, whatever new bit that, like, I'm trying to learn, and I do put in that effort to just explore those little new things, one thing at a time, and then I try and apply it. And I think that's the way for me to, like, kind of absorb that thing. So I feel if you're writing a song, that's really helpful. Record the melodies, write the lyrics down immediately. And, whenever you're sitting for a songwriting session, like, it all flows suddenly, right? But
You don't get stuck with a loop. Like, for example, I would come up with an idea,
Mhm.
a melody. I would work on it. I would create a bass line. I would create a drum track on it, and I would do everything. But then I don't know where to go from there. I don't know how to connect it, how to bridge it to the next portion, next part. Then it becomes an effort, and then it kind of loses the essence of why I ever started the song. So that becomes sometimes a challenge. How do you overcome that challenge?
That happens with me all the time, yeah. So I write so many of these 30-second, 45-second like loops, if you will, because you find something interesting, you make it, you build it, and then you don't know where to go from it. What's helped me is that, revisiting it again and again, I realized कि वो बैठे नहीं हुआ, अगले दिन बैठे नहीं हुआ, छोड़ दिया, हफ्ते बाद फिर खोला उस session, and then suddenly there's a new tune that comes to your eye. So that is one way of approaching it, that you keep going back to it, like, again and again a few times. If there's value in it, it'll वो खुद से reveal हो जाएगा.
Yeah.
The other thing is, obviously, like, you learn music theory, and then it will give you at least a certain idea that, which will tell you, hey, this is where you can go, this is where you can go. And it really helps.
Yeah.
When I started learning music theory, it made my decision making harder. then simpler
Yeah.
because suddenly I knew that now there were 4 options to choose from. I could do this, and then when you're composing by yourself, it's very hard to take those decisions
Of
because
course.
you don't have perspective. If I'm writing something and you say, "Hey, acha laga," so in my head I'm like, "Oh yeah, this sounds great. Let's done." Otherwise, I'll try 4 combinations for the same
only
thing.
mind
And
working on it.
correct. So it initially confused me a lot, but I think when you keep doing it, then that sense develops that you can distinguish that, hey, this sounds better than this. Done. Commit, move ahead, commit, move ahead. So that's also something I've learned from most producers and mixing engineers. They like to commit and move.
Okay.
And, it doesn't matter if it's not sounding good, just record, commit, move ahead, come back to it later, and you'll figure out if it sounded good or not.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great advice. Like, नहीं तो the worst come to worst, आपको पता है what chords you build the loop on.
हाँ.
Chat GPT में भरो और मत करना ये. Be true to your art. Kidding. ऐसे bridges नहीं आते. I've tried it and they sounded not that great, by the way. They weren't great, and I was like, मैं नहीं कर रहा ये. I'm not doing this again. But yeah, man, Varun, it's been honestly a pleasure to have you. And
likewise, I just enjoy talking about this so much, and
same.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Thank you so much for coming, man, and thanks a lot for your time today. That brings us to the end of the episode, and thanks everybody for listening in. I will include the link to Antariksh's page, the YouTube page. Do check out their music. I think they're brilliant as to what they've created, what they're working towards. But thanks a lot again for listening in, and until next time, cheers.